Hi everyone. Welcome to the talk today. It's great to be here. I used to work at ASAP and just moved to a different position in April with the German Institute of Development and Sustainability. So here I work on climate migration, the intersection between climate change and migration, and currently conducting research on the localization of global norms for migration and climate change. So I'm doing 2 case studies in West Africa, looking at Senegal and Ghana to see how instruments such as the Paris Agreement or the Global Compact for Migration are used at the local level, so at the city level, to inform policies. So you may already know that migration is considered to be an adaptation strategy. Because I'm a researcher, today the case studies and examples that I'll be presenting to you draw from my research work, so it's be on a research focus. And I'll be covering just 2 principles. So we'll be talking about context, how context matters, and then we'll be talking as well about justice, so how justice is important when we're thinking about climate change adaptation. So to go ahead and get started, context matters. When we think about climate migration, the dominant narrative is that people are moving en masse. So you see in terms of how it is communicated, people moving in droves. Also, the dominant narrative is that people are moving in droves from the global south, countries of the global south to the global north. So thinking about people moving from Africa to Europe or to the United States to North America. So that's what is there in the dominant narrative. So context matters because if that's the dominant narrative, what are the types of policies, what are the types of strategies that will be implemented when we're thinking about mobility as a climate adaptation strategy? At the same time, other studies have shown that context matters. When you look at small island developing states, we're finding that people have connections to the land, which means that not everybody is interested in moving, even though they are faced with huge climate threats. In the work that I've done personally, I explored this to be able to understand what the context is in cities, not only cities, but cities in the global south, like Lagos. So Lagos was the case study where I did my research. Lagos was chosen for a reason because Lagos is a metropolitan city. It's a city that attracts a lot of people, not only within the country of Nigeria, but also attracts people from neighboring countries. And it's a coastal city. So when people in this city are faced with sea level rise or increased flooding events, like how do they respond? And how do they think about mobility? Do they think that, are they interested in moving long distances? Or are they interested in moving short distances? And so that context is important because when we're designing adaptation strategies, when we're designing policies, whatever feedback we get is how we should be able to design those policies. Projections for Africa, in fact, for the future show that a lot of the climate mobility is going to be internal. So meaning that most people will be moving within the continent of Africa, within their countries, rather than moving long distance. In my research and other research that has come out has shown that small-scale mobilities matter. So I conducted interviews and I conducted surveys with Lagos residents. And the interesting finding that I got was that people would choose to move within the city. So what does this mean for cities? It means that cities need to think about ways of designing strategies to be able to ensure that the most vulnerable are protected. At the same time, there are people who choose to stay, so they want to stay for several reasons. Some people want to move, but they are trapped. And so adaptation professionals working in the areas of climate mobility need to think about strategies for protecting people who are trapped, protecting people who want to move, and also considering people who are moving within small distances, so small-scale mobilities within the city. I also, within that study, in line with context, tried to find out what the possible adaptation interventions could be. And so this is informed through research again by asking people what their needs are. So if you're going to choose to move, if you're going to choose to stay or move within short distances, what are the things that adaptation professionals in that area can prioritize? And so these are some of the results that came out from the study. These are just some of them. So when we rank them from 1 to 3, these are the top 3 needs. Affordable housing is a big deal. And when we're thinking about people moving within short distances, they want to move to places that are less vulnerable to flooding events, less vulnerable to sea level rise. And so they need to move to places that are not only safe, but also affordable. People are also interested in economic opportunities. So when people are moving, the adaptation intervention is not just removing people away from risk, it's also considering how their livelihoods can be protected. So people need jobs, people need income. So being able to design interventions that not only consider the physical risk, but also consider the economic and social dimensions that people face. Again, social factors. So people want to move in a way that they're able to maintain their family units. People are pulled towards places where they have family already living in, or people's migration decisions are influenced by their families. They won't move to a place necessarily where their family members won't want to move to. So that's something to think about. Access to information was something that also came up. So in terms of adaptation interventions in this scenario, it means that not everyone has information on the safe places to move to. So being able to provide equitable access to information to everyone, especially those who are most vulnerable. In Lagos, for example, we have a lot of people living in low-income slum settlements. And so it's important that that demographic of the population is equipped with the right information on the safe places, affordable places that you can move to. And the next point that I'll be talking about is on justice. So why does justice matter? Justice is another principle of adaptation in ASAP's Living Guide. And I'll be sharing an example specifically from my work with ASAP. So last year, I worked with ASAP on a project, also climate migration based, on preparing cities in the Great Lakes region to accommodate climate migrants. Again, there's this narrative, or there's this idea that people are pulled or will be pulled towards the Great Lakes region due to the abundance of fresh water, also due to the fact that in some places within the Great Lakes region of the United States, there's aging population. And so there are benefits to gain from people moving into the region. But at the same time, it's also important when we think about climate change adaptation, not only to consider the fact that climate change itself, the impacts are not distributed equally. The people who are the most vulnerable and who have contributed the least towards climate change bear the brunt of climate change. And so being able to think about that as we design our adaptation policies and programs are very important. So within this project, we conducted focus group conversations with different stakeholders. We conducted with government agencies, government representatives. We conducted with local government, state government, but also environmental justice communities. And the perspectives were different. So while there's that, recognition of the fact that climate migration could bring opportunities for the economy, for jobs, and all of these things, environmental justice communities, on the other hand, are skeptical, because from talking to the people that we talked to, we found that people, they're concerned about people with power moving in. So it's about who is moving in. It's not only about the benefits, but when people with power, people with economic power and wealth are moving into an area, what it does is that it destabilizes the local communities. So these are communities that are already facing significant disenfranchisement from historical injustices. And so once you have that happen, people moving in, there exists like potential displacements, gentrification, changing of communities, and all of these potential impacts. And so as adaptation professionals, it's good to be able to think about the likely impact of our interventions on different demographics of people. And then I will just close with this by saying that, you know, in conclusion, our adaptation must align with community needs. We need to figure out what the context is rather than go with a dominant narrative or a dominant intervention. So in whatever communities that you're working in, it's good to be able to inquire through research by investing in research and data to know what the specific needs are. In the case of Lagos, useful intervention could be a managed retreat intervention where people who want to remain within the city are just moved away from at-risk locations inland. And also being able to think about the ways of ensuring that their livelihoods are protected. That would be an effective intervention. And so investment in research and data is very critical. Diverse perspectives must be represented. Different people have different needs, so it's important to bring different views to the table to be able to understand that one person's needs or one category or one group of people's needs are different from another. And then finally, we need to avoid replicating or exacerbating injustices of the past. We need to recognize the ways in which we've, contributed or impacted different people, and how we need to avoid that through our policies and programs. And so thank you so much, and I look forward to engaging further through questions.
Thank you so much, Susan.